Welcome to Faith and Freedom. For the next few minutes, we hope to inform, inspire, and encourage you as we discuss the legal victories and challenges to your fundamental freedoms and religious liberties. Faith and Freedom comes to you from Liberty Counsel, a civil liberties education and legal defense organization. Join us now as Matt Staver, the President and General Counsel of Liberty Counsel, explains the latest legal issues all across this country in the courtrooms of America. Liberty Counsel is winning the battle for your constitutional freedoms.
The Federal Defense of Marriage Act gets a boost from Paul Clement, who's going to be the attorney of record, but then controversy ensues over the law firm King & Spalding. I am Matt Staver, founder and chairman of Liberty Counsel and dean of Liberty University School of Law. We're talking today about this particular issue with Shawn Akers, the dean of the Helms School of Government at Liberty University. This individual, Shawn, Paul Clement, he was the former Solicitor General of the United States, and as a Solicitor General, they represent the United States at the United States Supreme Court and make arguments there. And he was the Solicitor General under George W. Bush, an excellent, very skilled attorney. He actually argued in a case that I was involved with in 2005 involving the Ten Commandments, where he had the U.S. government's position at the time supporting the display of the Ten Commandments. Well, he has been hired by the United States House to represent the House of the United States regarding the Defense of Marriage Act. And then the firm King & Spalding, who he was with at the time, reneged after agreeing to the representation because they buckled under political pressure.
You know, Matt, for our listeners, before we get too far into it, can you remind us what DOMA does, the Defense of Marriage Act, and why this might be a political hotbed before we talk about King & Spalding?
Yeah, the Defense of Marriage Act was passed in 1996 by a bipartisan House and presidency, signed into law by a Democratic president in 1996, passed overwhelmingly, and it says, for federal purposes, marriage is the union of one man and one woman. Well, that law has been challenged on several occasions. In fact, Liberty Counsel has successfully defended the Defense of Marriage Act. But recently it was also challenged in several court cases, and the President of the United States, through the Department of Justice, is tasked with defending federal laws. But President Obama instructed Eric Holder, the Attorney General, not to defend the law, and actually to tell the courts that, in his opinion, Obama's opinion, and Eric Holder's opinion, that the law is unconstitutional. So not only abandon the defense, but ultimately tried to torpedo the law. That left the law out there with no defense, and so the United States House came in and voted to hire its own counsel to intervene to give this law an adequate defense as it deserves. The House hired Paul Clement, who at the time was with the law firm King & Spalding, which is a very large law firm throughout the United States.
Well, Matt, I'm just really curious to get your take on this, because this sounds like something out of a storybook. We've got the executive branch refusing to defend a law that it's supposed to be executing. So we have the legislative branch coming to the rescue, saying that since you're not going to defend it, we're going to hire a private firm to defend the law, and they hire King & Spalding, hire Paul Clement at King & Spalding to defend it. But then what happens, Matt?
Well, right after it was announced that Paul Clement was hired, and of course he was with the law firm King & Spalding, then a couple of days later, the weekend passed, the Easter weekend passed, and then King & Spalding, through one of its representatives, Robert Hayes, the firm's chairman, said that they have ended the representation of this case. They said that the vetting of this was inadequate. Well, if you go to King & Spalding's website, the law firm boasts that it has received awards from homosexual groups for sponsoring homosexual dinners, homosexual parades, and it boasts that it has a 95% rating from a homosexual lobbyist group known as the Human Rights Campaign. Now, Paul Clement resigned immediately once this law firm made this unwise, politically motivated decision. It was unwise for King & Spalding to do this, and they're going to take a black eye for doing this. And he resigned immediately. He says, quote, "I resign out of the firmly held belief that a representation should not be abandoned because the client's legal position is extremely unpopular in certain quarters. Defending unpopular positions is what lawyers do. Efforts to delegitimize any representation for one side of a legal controversy are a profound threat to the rule of law." He goes on to say, when it comes to the lawyers, the surest way to be on the wrong side of history is to abandon a client in the face of hostile criticism, close quote. That's Paul Clement resigning immediately from King King and Spalding, and then now going to the Bancroft law firm, where he will continue to represent the Federal Defense of Marriage Act on behalf of the U.S. House of Representatives.
You know, Paul Clement is a breath of fresh air here, Matt. This is hard to even understand. We've got a legitimate United States federal law that's been passed that the executive branch wouldn't defend, that the legislative branch stepped in to hire a firm to defend, and the firm backed out on that representation, accepted representation, and then it fired its client, the United States Congress, over defending this. So Paul Clement takes a very principled stand and says that he's going to go elsewhere and defend it anyway, and wrote a very eloquent letter of resignation that expressed that very, very well. You know, this is the kind of thing, Matt, that we need to wake up and get behind. We need to be able to see that when somebody like Paul Clement is willing to stand on principle, we need to voice support for that.
Well, Paul Clement is a very skilled attorney, and so King and Spalding has lost a very skilled attorney, but they've lost, in my view, a significant reputation, because this is a very large law firm. For them now to buckle to this political pressure from the homosexual lobby is just atrocious. And if you can't trust King and Spalding when they make the decision to represent you, not to abandon you publicly, then how can anybody trust them later on? I think this is a very bad political move for King and Spalding, but it is the right decision by Paul Clement. He is a man of integrity. He did the right thing. Had he not resigned, he would have been complicit with this wrong decision. And Paul is right on. He says that once the decision is made to represent this client, which they did, they went through that decision, they made it, it was public, it was an announced decision just before Easter, then they should not have backed off, no matter what kind of criticism they're getting from any quarter. They have a duty to represent. And for them then to buckle because of political pressure does undermine the rule of law, because what it does is it publicly puts out there a particular client, and then you publicly back away from that client. And that literally undermines that client's ability to defend the case and the cause.
Yeah, I mean, that begins to be a very questionable set of actions under any circumstances, because you're acting in a way that could be detrimental, that would be detrimental to your client. But now, you did point out in this particular case, as the way things work out, that the defense of DOMA is now probably in better hands than it would have been with the DOJ.
Yeah, it's definitely in better hands now with Paul Clement. He's a skilled attorney. The DOJ, the Department of Justice, was not adequately defending the case anyway. So actually, at the end of the day, it works out better. And they've got one of the best lawyers that they could have to argue this case eventually, if it goes that far, to the United States Supreme Court. I have a lot of confidence in his abilities to be able to do a good job in this particular case. I think this also points out another thing, and this is where I think people ought to wake up to this, and this is this radicalism of the homosexual agenda. It is not about tolerance or tolerating views. If it were, you would not have this political pressure placed on King and Spalding law firm by the homosexual lobby. It is about a zero-sum game. They win, everything else loses. And anything that has a different view, or anything that represents a legal perspective that differs from them, they want to disenfranchise, disable, take away their employment, belittle them, dehumanize them. It is a zero-sum game, and people ought to wake up to that reality.
You know, you make such a great point, Matt. If this were really such an open-minded debate, why would anybody have a problem with King and Spalding making the case? I mean, that's what we call it in the law, that every case has two sides, and there's never, an attorney's never looked down on for making the case for the other side. That's what we're trained to do. But in this case, that's not allowable. Why? You know, you make an excellent point here.
That's how the justice system works. I mean, the book of Proverbs says, he who states his case first seems right until another steps forth and challenges him. And our justice system is designed that in the back and forth of truth and justice, that a just decision and a truthful decision will ultimately arise out of that situation. But you can't have that if you disable one side, and that's exactly what was at play here. So I applaud Paul Clement, but I also say that this is a wake-up call for all Americans, because this is the battle that's coming. It's a zero-sum game, and it is not about tolerance. It's about dominance and opposing anything that has a different perspective than the radicalism of the homosexual lobby. Give us a call at Liberty Counsel at 1-800-671-1776. You can ask for our new book, Take Back America. It's a new, revised, republished book through our new publishing arm, and it is Take Back America for a contribution to Liberty Counsel. We'll send it to you right away. And of course, we have the previous book that I wrote called Same-Sex Marriage, Putting Every Household at Risk. You can order that by going to Liberty Counsel's website, lc.org, or you can call 1-800-671-1776. You can order it right there on the website, email us, or give us a call. Make a difference in your community. Stand with this ministry through prayer and financial support, and extend your reach to all of these issues to do good around the country.
You have been listening to Matt Staver of Liberty Counsel. Our hope is to encourage and inspire you to stand up for your faith, family, and freedoms. We can accomplish a lot when we work together. Get informed and get involved today. Sign up for our free monthly newsletter, The Liberator. We will send it out to you free of charge. Stay informed with our Liberty Alert email update. Just click on the website at www.lc.org or call us at 1-800-671-1776. Tune in next time to learn more about your rights right here on Faith and Freedom.